Well, hello everybody. Welcome back to Aquarius Rising Africa. And I have with me again the beautiful, gorgeous, astounding, great Rachel Vaughan of Australia. I know we've missed her a bit here on Aquarius Rising Africa, but we've done quite a few shows over on Gnostic where it's kind of like behind it's uncensored. That's the word I'm looking for, uncensored. So the more sensitive topics we will put onto Gnostic. And so if you haven't caught Rachel's recent interviews, please go and find them on Gnostic. The link would be below in the description area of this conversation we're about to have. But yeah, so I've actually been doing Rachel's amazing course, Ley Love Down, about ley lines and wow, just learning amazing stuff about understanding and seeing and recognizing where the ley lines are, sort of energy portals, if you will, seeing it in nature. And again, like Jesse is teaching us a lot of stuff about recognizing the buildings and the symbolism in the buildings and stuff like that. Rachel is showing us how to do that in nature, which is incredible because now we realize where a lot of these activities happen, right? And I'm talking about interdimensional activities a lot of the time as well. But not only that, in Rachel's course, in the ley lines, we spoke about places like churches, slaughterhouses, hospitals, psych wards, those places that we know are there's something going on there, Are these places built on ley lines? And if so, what is the reason? How do ley lines work actually? And yeah, so Rachel is gonna most definitely educate us more on that. And it's very, very interesting and such important information at this time. So beautiful, Rachel. Welcome. How are you?
Oh, good. Thank you, darling. And thank you for having me on for this very important topic because I think we're going to be hearing a lot more about this sort of thing very soon. There's big shifts going on, there's a lot of exposure going on. So, this is going to be a topic of great interest, I believe. So, yes, as you were
Absolutely.
describing, a lot of these really places where a lot of really intense emotions are experienced are placed within the crossing points of ley lines or within ley lines. So where you get ley lines crossing, so to start off with, ley lines are magnetic frequency. They are the Earth's meridians. The Earth is a conscious being. And just like we have meridians and chakras of the body, the Earth does also. So these magnetic frequencies, these ley lines are like channels of this different energy that go across the landscape. Some actually go vertical. A gentleman called Trevor Wee taught me this, and I have seen the stargates and the openings that go in a vertical manner or go above ground. And that's the reason why we have things like tumps and mounds in places like the UK. They could see where the ley lines were crossing, creating these beautiful, high frequency portals, but they couldn't access them for their rituals or their ceremonies. So they would build up the area so that they could actually get up into the portal, and hence why tumps and mounds exist. But basically, what you have is a lot of town planners, way back and now, are Freemasons. And so they know where the ley lines are, whether they use dowsing, whether they can see them. And I teach in my course, as you know, how to actually see them visibly. Now, if I can teach that, obviously they've probably known this for a very long time, I'm just assuming. They use a sighting rod to sight a ley line before they place a church or an arena or a hospital or a penitentiary, mental houses, as you said, slaughter yards. All of these places are strategically placed within the crossing points of ley lines. And the reason for that is, as you said, these are interdimensional spaces. So where you get a crossing point of ley lines, you get a sphere of energy, different sized spheres of energy depending on the frequency and power of the ley lines and the number of ley lines feeding in. So as an example of that, if you looked at the courtyard at the Vatican, you can see very clearly there's an obelisk at the center. That's where the energy is harnessed. It's even got a copper top on it. It's a very conductive element. And you can see all the lines leading in this circular courtyard. So the circle is actually marking out the sphere. And all of the little striations in the courtyard are the ley lines that go towards, it's like the spokes of a wheel that go towards the obelisk in the center. So these are Loosh harvesting devices, basically. All of these stones that you see in all of these incredibly magical ceremonial places like Stonehenge, whether it's been moved or not, doesn't really matter. The Avebury Stone Circle, I mean, there's so many across the world. These are all piezoelectric stones, so they hold a lot of quartz, and they are frequency generating and harnessing devices. They're not just stones. So apparently for Stonehenge, the stones actually had to be quarried and taken from about 500k away. I think it was 500k or 500 miles, depending on what that was. So, that's a long distance, a long time ago to bring these rocks. Obviously, the rocks were important. I'm sure they could have got them a lot closer and easier. So where you've got these crossing points of these ley lines, arenas, for instance, are a really good example. So particularly in Australia, so we have arenas that look like eyes. The Melbourne Cricket Ground's a really good example. It's this big circular arena that looks like a big iris. Taylor Swift was there last year, and she had a mark tree. So everywhere where you'll get a ley line, you'll see these trees and plants that try to avoid growing within the ley lines, and they're very tortured looking usually, and they've got bowed trunks or the branches are all bowed around the leys. She had a very obvious ley line with a mark tree on stage, and it basically showed that the ley line was going down the stage where she was doing her stuff. And obviously I shared this in my course, and you've seen that. Well, shortly
Yeah.
after that,
Sorry, and I don't want to lose your train of thought there, but what would we understand, like it's harvesting loosh, right? But from your understanding, what was there anything specific she was trying to achieve there?
so when you see people who get worship energy from their following, it's about the energy that was being expressed in the MCG within that eye-shaped portal was,
Right.
as in she's better than that. That all the young people in that arena were thinking about how they couldn't get to her. They couldn't attain what she has, this
Oh
fame and
my goodness,
use.
yes. That
So
that
it's that,
constant yearning and idolizing, and that's where they get, oh, I want to be like her. I want to use the product she uses. I want to dress like she does. And that's where, of course, the whole vanity comes in, and the designer clothes, and the teenagers wanting to be Taylor Swift. Oh my gosh, it just fits in so perfectly. And
and
then then they would sell the clothing brands and all of that, because that all feeds in to that energy of worship me. I am
yeah.
this goddess that is unattainable to you, but you can try and look like me by buying that and that and that.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's, again, worship energy is the worst kind of energy. This is why churches are placed in these ley lines, these crossing points of ley lines. For the worship energy, you don't worship anything. Do not worship anything. And I'm sorry to the Christians and the Catholics and the other religious people who believe it's a good thing to worship, but what you're doing is that's another form of loosh. What we're supposed to be doing is living our lives with integrity, and you can aspire, but you shouldn't worship.
Yeah,
Aspiration is different. Emulating
absolutely.
somebody because they're like Jesus Christ, because he did the right thing, that is different to worshipping somebody. So Katy
Absolutely.
Perry then comes along shortly after Taylor Swift does this in the MCG. Katy Perry comes along, tweets about how she's opening a portal. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. It was so painfully obvious. She even had the vortex marked out. So where you get these portals, you get this vortex energy. It swirls around. She had it marked on the ground.
Yeah,
And a big butterfly, which is, the symbol of the MK Ultra monarch. So the butterfly was pink, but it doesn't matter. It's still that monarch symbol of the butterfly. So that, I feel for both of those women. I feel like
yeah,
they're being used.
yeah,
They are loosh harvesting devices in themselves. The way that they do that their work, I'm sure that they probably worked very, very hard. They probably don't get much of a break. In fact, even leading up to Katy Perry coming here, there were all these. We've got one major newspaper in my state of South Australia. It's rather tragic, and it's just all propaganda. But they were basically advertising her wares for people to have private connections with her. And it was, she might as well have been a lady of the night. That's how it was described. I felt sorry for her. I really did. So, where you have these arena spaces back, in the Roman times, they would get the Christians out there and they'd feed them to the lions. It's the same sort of thing. It's getting a whole crowd. So, Taylor Swift's obviously connected to this guy in America who was in the Super Bowl. It's all about connecting all of these different countries and this agenda of people worshipping and, oh, look, aren't they perfect? And I'm sure they probably kiss in front of the cameras and nothing to do with any kind of relationship. But yeah, this is Freemasons, town planners, all of these people in these secret societies, they know exactly what they're doing. And so they want us to go in and share or express certain energetic frequencies within these spaces. My idea is to go out there and do and express joy, not worship, joy. Love the plants, love the animals, love Mother Earth. I mean, but don't worship anything.
Exactly. It's such a fine line, and it's in fact, I did a show with Jesse Zaberta not too long ago called Addicted to Divination. And I did that. The reason why I chose that topic, because for about 2.5 years, I actually researched the tarot card industry, if you want to look at it on YouTube. Amazed at how many people have given their power away. Hey, I honestly, and anyone who knows me knows that I was reading the cards for not a very long time, but a long time. It was just a natural progression for me to put them aside and connect very differently. They were a tool for me, right? I have no problem with someone having a reading here and there or whatever the case might be, or pulling a card or whatever as a guideline or something like that, message for the day or something like that, But for me, it's when people give their power away, just like they do in the beauty industry, right? Because that's an addiction in itself, Oh my God, I can't go out, I've got no makeup on. I'm like, where did you come on that? You look 10 times more beautiful without your face caked in base. That to me is a woman's beauty, is her natural beauty type thing. But here we look at, again, am I going to be loved? Am I going to have enough money? Because it's always love and money. When's he coming back? What's he doing? It was amazing. I mean, there's some very good readers out there, and there's some ones that attach themselves to very shady energies and entities as well. That's for sure. So for me, that was very obvious when I finished. And I must have felt quite nauseous, because if I have to see another tarot card read, I will just no, 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 please just get off my timeline now after, because I did a lot of research, just listening to different signs and, that seeing what they say and understanding what is it that gets people so caught up in something where they're losing their own power. Because when we lose our connection to spirit, we then get swept away in the ocean, right? It's like you lose, like a kite. I'm like a kite. I like to have my base connected and then float around type of thing. That's what I like to do, but I like to come back to myself for sure. And I think a lot of people have lost that connection, and we're seeing that more and more. And I know stuff like what you're doing now as well is definitely so great in terms of bringing people back to what they need to be doing, seeing, feeling, observing, and taking care of. Yeah, because it really, you are your own portal, actually, right? For good or evil.
Exactly, yeah. And it does, I do get very frustrated with people who do readings with whatever tool they use, who allow people to access them too frequently. Because what happens is people get, like you said, addicted to divination, or they get really dependent.
Yeah.
So one of the reasons why I used to do phone readings, but I couldn't, and I was on a line, and I couldn't control who would contact me, and I'd have arguments with people because they'd rang me the day before, and you can't keep reading for people every day. It's not good for them. So I would try to give them tools, do this, do that. You can do this for yourself. You don't need to do this. And they'd get very annoyed. But, so I just took myself out of that arena, and now I've got complete control, and I don't let people, come to me for readings too frequently, because it's just wrong. You can't delegate to other people your spiritual growth.
Exactly.
It doesn't work that way. If you want to grow spiritually, learn how to use a tool like that for yourself, and don't become dependent on it. Don't give yourself a tarot reading several times a day. One card a day, beautiful. If you want to do that, that's
Exactly.
lovely. But don't do it constantly, and I think, but the problem is we come here to learn and to have experiences, and people don't want to go through the hard stuff. They want to be
Right.
pre-prepared. They want to know what's coming. But there's no point being here. If we knew everything, I don't know everything. I when I make mistakes in readings, absolutely. I don't want to know everything. I don't want to be absolutely accurate, because I don't want something to come into my mind and for me not to have any possibility that I'm wrong if it's something that I don't want to know. It's
Yeah,
going to happen. I don't want to know about it. So,
I
people
agree.
people need to stop delegating to others, growing their own spirituality, so they can intuit those things for themselves.
I
Yeah.
fully agree with that. And it just, again, as I said, it shows me just how much humanity has given their power away.
Yeah.
We've given our power away, whether it's to churches, whether it's to religion, churches, same thing, parental desires, right? And allow our parents to live vicariously through us and our
Yeah.
kids. We do that, like we condition them, we condition to other people's ideas or thoughts. Um, we lose focus of the things that we need to be focusing on, and we get caught, kind of get swept away. And it's really, it's getting back to yourself. And it's only when we get back to ourselves, Rachel, it's like what you're teaching, then we can see what's going on around us. Then we can understand what it is that we need to eat that is good for us, not just go and buy a box of something or a packet of something. You start being more conscious of what you put into yourself, what you eat. Your food becomes your medicine, stuff like that. None of this stuff that we're talking about here can follow itself through authentically and consistently unless people connect with that spiritual connection, right?
Yeah. And I believe we've come into a paradigm now, because we've come into this fifth dimensional frequency where spirituality, true spirituality, not something that you delegate to a priest or somebody else who's a spokesperson for a particular religion, true spirituality of knowing yourself, knowing the earth, knowing how to interact in a positive way. There's no way you can delegate that to somebody else, as I said before. I believe that this whole paradigm is going to be incredibly spiritual, not religious, spiritual. And we've got a lot of work to do, because there's a lot of structure that has to collapse. Third dimensional, not as in physical dimensional, but as the old paradigm structure has to collapse so that we can rebuild it. And there's going to be a lot more community-based connections, I feel. Whether, that can still be online, it can still be through, technology, but I think a lot of people connecting with their local sort of situations as well. I think there's going to be a lot of that this year too.
I think it's amazing because already I know that's what we here on Arrow are doing. I've always loved working with communities, but not in the conventional way. So we do like monthly gatherings and shout outs for businesses and stuff like that, So just
Beautiful.
to give everyone just something, and I think that is really so important where we're at right now. And, sort of taking it back to the ley lines and stuff like that and what they're being used for, correct me if I'm wrong. Um, they themselves didn't make the ley lines. The ley lines are organically there, right? So all they've done is they've taken that energy, because it's always about intention. Life is always about intention. What am I going to do with this phone right now? Am I going to phone my mother and say, I love you? Or am I going to phone my ex and tell him what a piece of rubbish I think he might be? You can use it as a tool to communicate good or nasty. Exactly the same thing with the ley line. It's powerful. It has that energy, which is neutral, and you can use it for amazing. If it's amazing God-given I want to say gifts or abilities, but I know that's not the right word. The right word eludes me now. But basically, to do work for good, right? And see things for good and understand it for good. But what they do a lot of the time is use it for very negative stuff. So, what's your take on that?
I personally think that the reason that they put, well, number one, the reason that secret societies have kept the fact that ley lines are real and they're measurable and they're visible secret. And an example of that is a gentleman called Robin Baker, who's been doing, studies, and a lot of other scientists are replicating his studies, proving that humans have magnetosensors in our retina, so we can pick up and we can see ley lines. He's been hammered academically, absolutely hammered. So they do not want this information out there because they don't want us to know what they're doing in those spaces and how important that they are. And the
Exactly.
reason for that is because I feel, the dark souls, entities, whatever, that puppet people in this on this planet, and a lot of these people, idiots, call on these entities and ask them to come and inhabit their bodies for power and
Yes,
money, and so they can prey on people sexually and all sorts of reasons. They don't seem to realize how dangerous that is. But the reason that happens is because they've been trying to keep us in a lower dimensional frequency for as long as possible, because in this new frequency where we're fifth dimensional, these entities can't puppet anymore. They don't have the same sort of power. They cannot communicate in the way that they could before. And that's what we're seeing at the moment. We're seeing a lot of people acting out. We're seeing a lot of really weird stuff happening, stuff that you would never expect ever is happening very quickly.
exactly.
And
Exactly.
these entities are being sloughed off, in my opinion. They cannot handle this frequency, a lot of them going underground.
What we're seeing, because I do a lot of interviews with people like Jessica Jones, the cryptid huntress, Dr. Dennis Carroll, and a really amazing guy, Akim Ra, who was part of the these colonization, the off-Earth colonies. What do you call it? The Stargate? Is it the Stargate program? Gosh, you see, my mind filters information so quickly, and then to try and get it again, I can't remember. But one of these Stargate, he was on Mars and stuff like that. These very cloned, speaks a lot about the cloning stations, and so we are well aware. I mean, he speaks about spending times on Mars with the ant people, um, who have spiders as their mules, and they deal in weed. You guys are gonna,
To
you
this.
gotta watch this. It's the most insane thing. I was like sitting there 10 minutes later going, I'm still trying to wrap my head around an ant person with a spider. But apparently, I mean, this stuff, I mean, this is real. It happens. And, these guys are trained to move through these portals. And I believe this. So it's becoming more and more obvious for us now that and we're seeing more and more werewolves, right? Werewolf sightings, dogman sightings, Bigfoot sightings. I think Bigfoot, I don't know if, is like, there's a lot of talk about whether Bigfoot is a genuine cryptid or something that's been created in the laboratories below. Personally, I think it's both, because these underground laboratories are creating these disgusting chimeras and things,
Yeah.
that, oh, I can't even imagine what they would have done to get them. But there are more and more sightings of these things actually coming up now. But I
Yeah.
have a
Yeah.
theory. And my theory is that it's because humanity's waking up. It's like every time someone wakes up, it's like a little light bulb goes on in the universe somewhere.
Yeah.
And these creatures of the night that have been in there, humans included, right? Because humans who are doing these things are very creature of the nighty, right? They're
Mm.
the instigators of it, are now they their sins, because really that is a sin. That to me, you cannot, if there's no other word for it, are coming to the surface. Their actions are coming to the surface. We are starting to hear more and more about it. So I have a theory, and that is that it's because we are waking up and shedding more light with our knowledge that these things are coming out. And instead of us fearing and running away, oh my God, the devil's chasing us. And hey, I'm sure that might be true. But if you yourself are turning around and actually facing it with your light, and
Yeah.
facing it with universal love. Not love for the creature, but universal love that radiates through you, you're safe. That's my opinion.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing about the Yowie, which is an Australian cryptid, is it's very, very intrinsic to original people's lore. And I love to always bring things back to the original people because aren't we supposed to be listening to culture? So, people who poo-poo this sort of thing and say it's crazy and, there can't be anything such thing as a cryptid, for heaven's sake, just look at all the ancient, religions, the true religions, the really basic ones that, sorry, not basic, but as in the underpinning of what all original religions were, they all have cryptid entity sightings as part of their lore. So
Yes.
Yowie can be either positive or negative. It depends on the individual who sees it. What you were saying about people waking up, and there's a lot more of these sightings. If you're not psychic, you're not going to pick up on it. And then
Right.
you've got a phone on you at all times, so you can take photographs. It's fantastic. But my theory is that the cryptids are seen, they're visible within the portal spaces because the portals where these crossings of ley lines are interdimensional and they are also timeless. And I think some of these entities existed a long time ago and a long time into the future. So we've got this interplay of different timelines in these spaces. There is actually a very obvious correlation within original Australian law about songlines and Yowies being interconnected again, because songlines and ley lines are the same.
How do I
And these
spell Yowie?
Yowie.
Yow. Okay, Yowie. What does that look like?
Well, it's basically a Bigfoot. It's a
Right.
humanoid, but very large, hairy, man-like creature.
Have you, as a matter of interest, have you had any sightings of cryptids in your ley line work?
Yes, I have. Yeah. So there's one particular, I do show photographs of this particular reserve that I like to visit because the energy there's a sentinel, which is it's a plant that looks very humanoid, actually looks like a Grim Reaper. It's got a very interesting energy, this park. I can see why they haven't turned it into housing because nobody would want to live there. Dogs don't like to go into this place. I like to go in there. I've actually taken a photograph and I show that in the course of a shadow entity. It's about 10 foot tall along a ley line path. I have photographed a werewolf cryptid in that space. And it was right next to where I later took a dog and the dog would not sit down. And there's a gentleman called Clint Walker, who's an original Australian who speaks on the Sky to Earth Academy podcasts. And he mentioned that in Australia, he's an original Australian. In Australian original law, there is some land that you travel across, and there's some land that's for sitting. And in these crossing points, you don't sit, you don't stay there unless you have ceremony to take to perform. You don't sit there. And this dog would not sit in this space. Poor darling. I wish I hadn't taken it there. I'll never do it again. But it was a lesson for me because I'd heard so many people say my dog won't go in there. And yet I love the place. I feel really drawn to it. I think
Wow.
because it needs help and it needs singing, it needs energy. And that's what I do as part of the Ley Love Down movement is I encourage people to, go out and sing into the ley lines, express positive emotions, joy, dance. As long as it's positive, 432 hertz frequency, anything positive in there will balance out the negative frequencies that these, idiots who like to be puppeted by dark souls call into those spaces.
I really love what you're saying, and I want to go back to what we were saying earlier on about the reason why we're seeing more and more things is as we're waking up, obviously our third eye is also starting to open, right? So we are becoming more psychic, which means more and more people will start seeing
Yeah.
the cryptids, right? Whether they are of God or of some apparition that's been created in some underground facility, because they're all created with magic. And yeah, I mean, they've all got very magical powers, those things, whatever they are, the werewolves and stuff like that. And a lot of them, from what we're hearing, are actually created from human DNA. They're saying like soldiers, these super soldiers that have been injected with some virus that takes you. to that space. But some of them are shapeshift. I don't know. It's crazy. Yeah, when you speak to people that have grown up in that system, and I think especially American, because you hear a lot about when you're hearing about Americans and stuff, a lot of the protectors of the system, of the mothers of darkness and stuff like that, are wolfy wolf boys. And in fact, it was apparently common knowledge that who's the old Bush? Is George what's his name? The father, the first president.
There's George Bush Senior and George Bush.
Okay, are they both,
Yeah.
they're both George?
I think they're both George.
Yeah, I think so too. You're right. I'm sorry. Um, I just forgot. But the older one,
Yeah.
his name was apparently his nickname was Timber, for that reason, Timberwolf. And apparently
Right. Wow.
so there's a lot of that goes on there. I mean, that's like the really dark side of this. And of course, I know that a lot of the book Bigfoots and stuff like that are not evil. There's a lot of them that are not evil, you know.
Yeah.
And I think all of this gets a bad rap. But I think, it's interesting times indeed, because the fact that we're having this conversation and the fact that you've had sightings and more people around here have had sightings. I saw something in the garden now that I can't say it was a cryptid, but it was like my mother saw it and a friend who was staying with her. They all saw this like big gray thing, like a cloud, almost like shapeless, and these big
Oh,
white eyes. And my mom then got freaked out and they told me. And then 3 days later, I saw it here outside and I went, away with you. You're not welcome here. And I blew it away. And he
oh,
left.
well done. Yeah. Okay. And you can see a lot of depictions of Bigfoot as like a cloud-like being because there's no definition, but with eyes. So
Yeah.
that's not
Yeah.
unusual.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, you're scaring my family. Go away.
Yes, exactly.
You're going to come say hi to me, just don't go to my family. You
Well,
know?
the interesting thing is, the people that do the psychic work tend to be attracted to areas where there are ley lines and crossing points. So you could easily be, there could be something like that in your garden. There's
I'm
scarcely a square
pretty
kilometre.
sure there was
Yeah.
so many strange things going on here. And I know we've had this conversation off air when I first moved in here. Wow. But it was amazing because the fact that I feed the doves, the one day I was sitting and the little dove ding ding ding, and they always walk into my house and they come and steal my cat food and ding ding ding, and then peck 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 as they're stealing, because I have some of the bowls here under my table, um, and it stood there, and I've been hearing voices since I was a child, voices of the animals since I was a child. So it's not strange for me, but I was like staring off into space, and then the dove stopped right in the middle of my doorway and said to me, I'm very happy that you're okay. We are very happy that you are okay. And I said, thank you. There'd been a particularly bad spate of these things coming in and what have you.
Yeah.
Um, and then he said it was a male. He said, thank you for feeding us.
Oh,
And I said, pleasure. And then he walked off and flew out. And then as I sat here, I realized it sort of came to me that me feeding them twice a day. And I love watching them eat. They are so cute. They are doing, doing, doing the way they run and they chase each other and, you know, and the peck, 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 peck on the earth, and doves represent peace, was
yeah.
a big part of what healed that. And that for me was wow. And that's the message he came to give me. And since then, only good things happen here. That's for sure. Nothing
Oh,
dodgy has happened, except Mr. Bigfoot came here the other day and I just said, hey, don't scare my family.
well, maybe, we observe them. Maybe they like to observe us too to see,
Yeah, pretty
is
much, pretty
humanity
much.
coming up in frequency? Are they doing their work or are they just slouching?
Yeah, exactly. What's interesting is like slaughterhouses and things like that, right? I mean, obviously, to me, that is so gross. They would also have those ley lines, right? They'd also put slaughterhouses on the ley
Oh, yeah.
lines, although that's not a place of worship. It's a place
No,
of
sacrifice.
sacrifice, of
It's
course.
mass sacrifice, and it's never done in a kind way. And what really is very disturbing is the feedlots, because those animals know what's going on. They're not stupid. Animals are sentient. They're incredibly intelligent.
Yeah.
So they are sitting in those feedlots knowing they're getting fattened up to be killed, because of course they can hear what's going
Yeah.
on.
Of course they
It's just
can.
it's despondency. That is despondency, Loosh. They are, and horror and fear. Yeah. So, and it's a lot
I
of
mean, have
those.
you seen, you talk about that, sorry, have you seen the cows on their way to the slaughterhouse? They literally cry.
Yeah.
There are
Yeah.
tears that come out of a cow's eye. They
Yeah.
know.
They
They know.
know. They're not stupid. With pigs, they actually have to put them on a conveyor belt and electrocute them in water because they're too smart. There's no other way to do it. However, I have seen they have a way of gassing pigs. They get a barrel of apples and have gas feeding in, and as the pig eats the apples, it falls asleep. It's a much nicer way to go than going down a conveyor belt, hearing, your family members screaming. It's just, oh, it's just wrong.
And we know
Um,
the sound of that pigs make. And there's such a controversy over pork and pig because we've heard a lot of stories about these child hunting games, that the remains of these kids are actually fed to the pigs. And
yeah,
then those pigs are fed to humans. And it's
yeah,
also, there's a lot of talk about the pig and human DNA. And human DNA, they use human DNA a lot because it's so pliable. And a lot of these disgusting experiments and things they do um, in the womb, Jesse's spoken about that a lot, where they take, like, when the breeders are pregnant, they will, while she's pregnant, they go and they will um, put this pig snout, pig hoofs on the child, and then there's demonic entities. And you've seen pictures of these things. They're there. It happens. They do that because obviously that's part of their experimentation.
mm.
And so this is the type of stuff, that we're dealing with. And it really is. And I'm sure these underground bases and military tunnels must also be very much aligned, right, to the
Oh, absolutely.
laydown.
And look, for people who don't believe in that sort of stuff, you've only got to look at some of the experiments. There's one that's, quite well known, where they took a dog's head and transplanted it onto another dog, so the dog had two heads. I mean, this is how sick these people are. They get funding for this stuff. They find this interesting, and that's a very well-known experiment. So they are doing all sorts of things that we're not allowed to know about. The cloning happened decades before
Yeah,
Dolly the sheep came out. That's just, obviously they've been cloning people forever.
uh,
And IVF in a way is a form of clone research. They're doing more and more research in that way. I believe with IVF, a soul comes to that conjoining of cells because they want to be that parent's
yes,
child. But I think,
yes,
like you said, with these underground experiments where they're creating these chimeras, they are actually literally, I think, trapping and entrapping souls to go into those entities.
yes,
And if
they
they
are.
want a big
Mhm.
scary monster, they will get a demonic entity and trap that
Yep.
into that.
There's a whole trade that goes on. There's a whole soul trade that these guys in the underground do, and it's the Raphaim, right? They call them the Raphaim, which are these unclean spirits, right, that are
Right.
waiting for a body. So they'll take whatever they can, whether it's a human body in a psych ward, right? Because
Yeah.
we know now that that happens a lot, where they literally they will entrap that soul in a crystal, right, of that person, and the person needs to be traumatized, obviously have given access. So usually traumatized kids that have been taken over, and familial or ancestral abuse,
Yeah.
whatever. And they entrap that soul, and the mages and stuff, witches, will hold it there, and then that body is used as a battery to keep charging that, and they use that guy's soul for their magic.
Right.
And then these bodies that are wide open in the psych wards, Jerry Marzinski, I mean, I've interviewed him many times on that. Jerry Marzinski, he will talk about this voices in the head. The voices in the head have got nothing to do with some kind of brain hallucination, crazy thing going on. It's entities that have then these Raphaim. the unclean
Yeah.
spirits, have then taken over this body and operating through it. And they do the most hideous things, and they love pain, and they love
Yes.
torture. And that's why you're going to find a lot of this happens in prisons where they fight and fight and fight, and they love the body to feel pain. They love that body to feel pain and go through the most trauma because that gives them their loosh.
Yes.
So there's a lot of that demonic activity, and that to me is definitely, I will call demonic activity because there's no other word for it, in my opinion. That happens there in prisons, in psych wards, especially.
And they'll often have the solitary confinement cells will often be deep underground, and there's a reason
Yeah.
for that as well, because when you have a despondent person, the aura can only hold back so much, and if you're experiencing grief or despondency or fear, that can leave the aura vulnerable to attack. And so they put people down into these
Human
spaces.
tartar cheese, yeah.
The
Mm.
deeper underground you go, the darker the entity. A lot of these entities can't exist on the surface. There's too much light. They can only exist deep down. And so, this is the way that we deal with people, penitentiaries and psych wards and things. It's just not right. It's ridiculous.
Terrible.
Jerry Marzinski said these entities attacked him and told him that he had no right to interfere with their way of life. Well, yeah, we do have a right, actually, and we are interfering, and we're coming into a time now where they're not going to be able to take over and have as much control as they had before. So what we need to
Exactly.
do now is to make sure that every single penitentiary, if they will even exist, obviously there's going to have to be places where you put people that do terrible things, but that they don't have any underground space at all. Hospitals also should not have underground. They should have no basements, nothing like that. In fact,
No, but
underground services of any kind should not exist.
I really think the hospitals are as guilty as anything else because they make sure the babies, the newborns are available, the aborted fetuses, all that. The hospitals are a primary source of, I can't even think about what you would call
Mm.
that stuff you get from a hospital that they
Yeah.
are so dedicated to getting. Wow. And you see, this is why it's so important to be able to go there. And as you say, go there and sing into the ley lines. Like, really, if you feel just to be there, sing, dance, bring in that beautiful positive energy, because the more of that we do, the more of it gets attracted to us. It's as simple as that. Whether you see that as being airy, fairy, or new age or not, I don't really care. But that's what happens.
And have the intention, as you're saying at the beginning, intent is everything. Have the
Yeah,
intention of balancing, creating balance within those ley lines and portal spaces, bringing in joy for the intention of freedom, freedom for the earth, freedom for humanity, freedom for all the bird species, all the animals, all the creatures, freedom from tyranny is what we need. And that's what the idea is, to go out and express that. We don't need a lot of people doing that work. You only have to have a certain number, maybe about 10,000 people doing it all at the same time. We have these group meditations where we have intent. So you don't have to physically go out in the lays all the time. You can go into a space like this, a Zoom space, and visualize a particular area. So beautiful volunteer. They're all volunteers. We're all volunteers. Nobody gets paid for this. Sarah's got a meditation coming up where she's encouraging people to imagine their local water place, a place that they love, that water, where water is, because water carries the frequency to the lays as well, because
absolutely.
they're all interconnected. And so then you don't even
Absolutely.
have to know what a ley line looks like. You just put your energy and your frequency into the water, and you can do that remotely. So it's all about intent, just as you were saying earlier.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. And that's beautiful. And that's how the people, are going to change the world. It's not going to be some politician or government official that's going to do it for us and get the staff to do it. We,
Yeah.
the people, will change this world because we choose to be here. We are sovereign beings here. And we've forgotten that, which is why we've been entrapped in this matrix of
Yeah.
linear time.
And now is the best time too. If you're doing a job that you hate, get out of it and do what you love. Find a way to make a living from it.
Absolutely.
There's always a way. Turn off that negative voice in the background that's saying you can't do it, whatever that might is, conditioning, programming, parents,
It's
as you're
so
saying
true.
before, whatever it
It's so
is,
true.
find the way to do
So
it.
true. Yeah, it's so true. It's so true, Rachel. It is so true. You know, people don't realize, when you're spending a minimum of 8 hours a day at a job that you're hating, how that brings your entire frequency of existing, not living. I use the word existing with
Mm.
purpose because you don't live when you're existing, sitting in a 2x2 or 4x4 office the whole day, doing someone else's paperwork for them or whatever it might be. Maybe you have a more exciting career than that, but still you're running against the clock all the time to achieve what? Money, um, status.
Mm.
That's good to have. We all need to be recognized and feel our worth, absolutely. But when you do what you love and you love what you do, you become magnetic. You don't chase anymore. It comes to you. What you need will find you. We find each other on these platforms because we're not chasing each other. We aren't jealous of each other. We aren't competing against each other. We're not trying to trip each other up. We work together as a team, right?
Mm.
And that's the intention. When we have that intention, we're good.
Yeah, exactly. And like you said, it's magnetic.
Mm,
Those who struggle financially often do so because you need to be hungry to do what you really are meant to be here to do. So if you don't have anything that's pushing you in that direction, we can get lazy and just stick in a groove and not
exactly.
thrive. Yeah.
And our thoughts become limited, and we start thinking. I say to people, travel. Honestly,
Yeah.
if I was of the age where I had a child with me, right? If I had a child, or even if had my granddaughter with me, the best education, obviously, to teach reading, obviously the basics to get by, yes, but to go to another country and eat their cuisine and learn the language
Oh
and
yeah.
understand the culture and
Yeah.
understand the spirituality or the religion, for me, is more education than anything. Where by the time the child is 10 or 15, they speak in 3 or 4 different languages, have experienced 3 or 4 different cultures,
Mm.
you know, that person is a very, very different person that's grown up in an apartment
Yeah.
and spent 80% of their day watching TV.
Yeah. Precisely. Lived experience.
Absolutely. And if that's not accessible to you right now, and I understand that for many people right now, it's not,
Mm.
but choose it and then get up and go walk around the block or join your gym, start there. And then
Yeah.
as you move, so everything within you starts moving too. Then we start making headway. We're not just sitting with a remote wishing and hating on those who are doing it, because that is what happens. That's why there's so much jealousy and cheating and lying out there. That's another thing, what I was saying earlier on about that divination thing. So much competition in love, and this one's having that one's man and that one's woman. And I'm like, oh my gosh, if you just loved yourself
Oh
enough to
yeah.
know that you're good on your own,
Mm.
and someone of that vibration is going to find you too. And if you're good on your own, that's awesome too.
Yeah.
People place too much, again, power outside of themselves. If we
Oh,
learn,
absolutely.
yeah, if we learn this, we're good in life. Then we see the ley lines, right? It's a natural thing. Yeah, you got to
Yeah.
retrain and you got to like, oh, I'd see that before, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's kind of like a layer of something lifts. You discard that other nonsense because it is nonsense.
And
Yeah,
look, we come here on our own. We might have spirit guides, we might have soul family, but we're really having our own experience. So you can't hold on to anybody in that
exactly.
experience. Jealousy is a pointless emotion to experience because you can't control anybody. And if somebody wants to go and stray outside of your relationship, they're not the right person for you. Let them go.
Yeah, exactly.
Find something that actually works for you. And back to, what we talked about before about finding your soul purposes, finding what makes your heart sing and doing that. if it doesn't make your heart sing, it's not for you. I really feel for people who just don't know what that is. They get so conditioned and so programmed they forget. But if you look back to what you wanted to be as a child, you might find what that is. So if you wanted to be a ballerina, maybe there's something to do with the physical movement of the body in dance or yoga or, martial arts or something. That might be something to pursue if it was something you loved as a child before, convinced you that you'll never make money that way.
Exactly. I always wanted to do ballet. My father wouldn't let me. He said
Oh,
because if I did ballet, then all the other kids had to. We all had X amount of stuff. We were six kids.
oh, geez. Okay.
But what I did then when I grew up was I started doing yoga. And that for me has been my ballet of moving my body, um, being flexible, feeling strong, feeling amazing. And I want to, that at this point, I want to say this, especially to survivors, whether you've come out of SRA or whether you've been violated, beaten, smacked around, whatever it might be, it's so important to start doing physical exercise, a
Yeah.
form of physical exercise that builds your strength. Because why do I say that? Is because physical violation is a very disempowering thing for a child or for a woman, where you have no power against your abuser or oppressor. And oftentimes you cower away, and what happens then, your body starts getting sick and weak, weaker and weaker. Just whether it's just on a cellular level or the bones, whatever, you kind of, and I've seen that a lot. And the minute you start doing some form of physical exercise, that you grow and you feel in control of your body. You start feeling strong. You start feeling healthy. You start feeling more confident. There's something so important about that. So even if you take your dog for a walk every day and you haven't for the last 10 years, even if you just start doing a few stretches in the morning, just lift your arms and, stretch and move your neck and just feel your body. It is such a
Mm.
beautiful vehicle, the most precious gem you will ever possess. Because without
It's
your
very,
body,
very
yeah,
very good dissociative as well. If you're dissociating a lot, doing those physical movements will bring you back into the body usually. So it's a good way to bring you back in, shake or, shake
yeah,
the body like animals do when they get chased. I did Max Lowen's trauma and recovery course recently. It was absolutely brilliant because as a survivor, I needed to know all of the psychiatric sort of information around it. All made so much sense. But one of the things Max explained is, when you see an animal chased, and it runs away from a lion, it will sit there and shake for a while. And that's the way of it calming down its, I think it's the autonomic nervous system. So it calms down, or parasympathetic nervous system, it calms it
yeah,
down. What's really interesting about singing is it does exactly the same thing. And you
exactly,
cannot think about something else and worry while you're singing. It's not possible. The singing itself
exactly.
brings you into a different frequency. It brings your whole body into this vibration, just like shaking for an animal, where you are uplifted. It is amazing therapy. I have a singing therapy coach called Charlotte Robertson. She's absolutely beautiful. And I'm now singing in a choir because when you work with groups of people too and you sing together, it is so joyful. It is, you don't even have to know
Beautiful,
the
yeah.
people very well. It's
Oh,
pure
wow,
joy.
that's amazing. Not sure
Yes.
I'll ever make the choir. I don't want to knock my confidence quite that much yet, so I'll do other things.
Brilliant,
I'll sing
because
in
if
the
you're jumping
shower.
up, you can't hear it because everybody else is singing at the same time. Nobody knows who it is.
I'll sing in the shower and give my poor neighbors earache.
Well, that's the thing. When you do
I,
singing therapy, you have to leave your inner critic at the door, and that was one of the hardest things.
I go to the
Leave that
ocean
on
and
the one side.
whenever
Yeah,
I go to the ocean, I sing to the ocean. I say, "Oh my gosh, this must sound terrible to you." No, I'm assured the ocean thinks I sound beautiful. Okay, thank you so much. I'll go sing to you from now on. Lovely.
started. That's where I started. I used to go and sing at the
I
ocean too.
love,
And
yeah, I love
yeah,
singing. I love dancing. I love music. I love just, and I remember I used to, in the days of clubbing, man, oh man, I was the first, no, not the first one there, never the first one there, but usually one of the last to go. But because I love dancing so much, it was just like, Amazing. Anyway, Rachel, wow, what a great conversation again. And I look forward to having you back. And we're not going to make it so long again. But for those, as I said to you guys earlier on, if you haven't caught Rachel's earlier interviews that haven't been on YouTube, they are on Gnostic TV, the channel. I mean, the link is in the description below. So please go catch them there. I mean, you talk about some very, very interesting stuff we can't always talk about here on YouTube. I know it's always a bit risque, but we do it anyway. But still, we'll go and just like be safe a little bit as well. Right? Yeah. Is there anything you'd like to say just before in closing, before we end off, Rach?
I just encourage people to, if they're interested in ley lines, go to Ley Love Down, the website, leylovedown.com, and there's all sorts of reference points and there's a song you can sing. There's protocols for you to be safe out in the ley lines, because you've got to be, you can't just go out there willy-nilly. You want to make sure you've got energetic protection while you do it. We have events, we have all sorts of things. We have these, guided meditations. We have a knowledge transfer series now. We had Dale Holmes on for the first one on the 13th of Feb, which was fabulous because Dale's amazing. So yeah, if you're interested in joining, that would be amazing. Come and join us and sing.
Yes, I was going to say, is that where can people get hold of you? Is it Ley Love Down, the website?
So the website is the movement, but if they want to contact me personally, www.number6science, so 6thscience.com. That's my website.
Perfect.
And I'm on all the platforms as well, but yeah. Mostly on.
You'll find Rachel very much on Telegram. That's where I see you the most. Doing some awesome stuff. Okay, everybody. Thank you so, so much for watching us, and thank you so much for supporting us. And to all our beautiful Patreons and members out there, I appreciate you very, very much. Join the membership channel. We're going to be doing some cool things as well, or join the Patreon as well. All the links below. And thank you for supporting us. And if you'd like, you can support us on PayPal, as well as buy us a coffee, which the link is below as well. Thank you so very much. I appreciate you. Thank you, Rachel. God bless. We'll see you very, very soon again.